A random group of people suddenly wake up to find themselves stuck on a desolate island. Surrounded by vicious savages, exposed to terrible diseases, and faced with life-threatening situations, they must work together to survive. The anime begins in a dark dungeon. A man named Ning wakes up and finds himself trapped inside. He then hears the voice of a girl in the cell next to his. She tells him that the spikes they're seeing move closer to them after every few minutes. After hearing this, Ning panics and frantically tries his best to break out through the window, but he quickly remembers that he isn't the Hulk when all his efforts prove futile. Peeking through the hole in the wall, he looks into the girl's cell and sees that she has an axe in her room, so he tells her to break the bars on the window in her cell so she can get out and save him too. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a window in her cell and she informs him, so he tells her to pass the axe to him through the hole in the wall. She initially hesitates before she thinks he'll betray her and leave her behind after escaping, but he vows to come back for her, so she decides to trust him. They try that plan, but it fails too because the hole is too small for the axe to pass through. Ning refuses to give up and tells her to try chipping away at the hole with the axe to make it bigger, but when she hits the wall, they both realize that it's made of granite and so it's too strong. At this point, they just sit back and accept their fate. The girl starts crying and Ning tells her to stay quiet because he needs to think. She tells him there's no point since they're already doomed and will soon be killed by the wall of spikes gradually moving toward them. He asks her how she got into the dungeon and she tells him that she just suddenly woke up on the iron bed in her cell. Hearing this, Ning comes up with an idea. He tells her to break the iron bed with the axe and pass a rod to him, so she asks how he plans to save her, and he tells her that the roof is made of rotting wood and that he would break it to rescue her. After she passes the rod to him, he uses it to break the bars on his window, and as he breaks free, the girl begins to cry again, fearing that he might not come back for her. In a flashback scene, we see the girl, whose name is Zhiyang, with 3 other hikers lost in the snow mountains. One of them gets injured and she tends to his wounds since she studied medicine and her father is a doctor. Later, the other 2 call her aside and suggest that they leave the injured guy behind, claiming that he's going to slow them down. However, Zhiyang decides to stay back with the guy in a cave while the others move on in the snow to search for rescue teams. The injured man thanks her for staying back to help him. He tries to kiss her, but she evades it and he asks her to be his girlfriend, but she also declines, claiming that she prefers intellectual guys to athletes. Zhiyang leaves the cave to forage for food and medicinal herbs, but when she returns, she finds out that the man had abandoned her, taking all the supplies she had left with him. The scene switches back to the present and Zhiyang, who's still trapped in the cell, recalls the memory and concludes that Ning isn't coming back for her, but just then, he breaks through the roof and rescues her. When they get out, they realize that they're at the top of a lighthouse. They have to climb down the ladder to reach the ground, but in the process, the ladder breaks and they fall into the water. Ning uses his body to shield Zhiyang from the impact and falls unconscious in the water. Zhiyang pulls him out of the water and takes him into the lighthouse, where she's confronted by a man who holds a knife to her neck. He asks her how she got on the island and she tells him all she knows, but she's more concerned with saving Ning. The man tells Zhiyang to stay quiet while he interrogates Ning and wakes him up by stepping on his fingers. The man then asks Ning if he knows Zhiyang and he says he's never met her. She tries to make him remember how they escaped from their cells, but the man gets upset because she talked when he told her to stay quiet. Enraged, he raises the knife and stabs the floor, centimeters from Ning's fingers, and gives them a final warning, demanding that they obey his rules. The man thinks that they were sent by a man, but Zhiyang denies it. Suddenly, Ning starts crying and behaving like a little boy. This confuses Zhiyang and the man. He asks her why Ning is behaving that way, and she tells him that he shielded her during their fall and hit the back of his head, so he suffered a blunt force trauma and is now exhibiting amnesia. The man doesn't believe her story, claiming that someone who only just met her wouldn't risk his life to save her. So Zhiyang counters his assertion, explaining that the amount of time people have spent together doesn't determine if someone would risk his life for the other. Hearing this, the man admits that she's right and decides that he's not going to kill them. Zhiyang then tries different ways to make Ning remember her or their time in the cell, but the only thing he can recall is reading an erotic magazine in the 5th grade. After observing the corpse in the room, Zhiyang notices that the number 834 is carved into its chest. She asks the man how he got to the island, and he finally introduces himself as Zhiyang and tells them that he was trying to escape from some guys on a boat a few days ago and suddenly ended up on the island. Zhiyang assumes that they might have also been on the ship of the smuggler Ming, who brought them to the island. After a while, Ning suggests that they've been added to some kind of game and that the numbers on the corpse are some kind of code. Zhiyang agrees with him and begins looking for more clues. They find a small scroll in the corpse's ear, and when they open it, they see a map of the island. Ning is convinced that he's seen the map before but can't remember where he did because of his amnesia. The following morning, Zhiyang takes Ning and Sujin outside, headed for the place marked X on the map despite their protests. Along the way, they find a bloody trap and Zhiyang suggests that they be more careful. They find some food to eat and afterward, Zhiyang takes Sujin into a cave and tries to force himself on her. Thankfully, Ning arrives and reprimands him for assaulting her when they're on the same team. Later, they hear a man running toward them. He falls into the trap they saw before, but they don't try to help him because they don't know what's chasing him. Eventually, his pursuer arrives and kills the man in front of them, causing Sujin to faint and making them wonder what kind of island they're on. Afterward, they return to their cave and Zhiyang offers to keep watch, asking Ning to get some sleep. The following morning, while Sujin and Ning are plucking some coconuts, a mouse scares her and Zhiyang quickly arrives, thinking it was the cannibal from before that came back for her, and he reveals that he's been on his toes so he can save them from any danger. Later, Sujin is attacked by two other cannibals, but Zhiyang and Ning aren't close by. Just when the men are about to kill her, a police officer named Tracy Candy shoots one of them, making the other run away. Zhiyang and Ning arrive not long after and Tracy tells them to come with her because some people are waiting for her. Zhiyang feels like he's seen her before but can't remember so he's skeptical about going with her. Suddenly, the cannibals return with reinforcements. They shoot arrows at them, so Tracy tells them to take cover and run to the creek where she'll meet them later. When they arrive at the creek, Zhiyang advises Sujin and Ning not to trust Tracy and asks them not to tell her anything about the codes or the map they found. He promises to share all his supplies with them as long as they go along with his plans, so the three form a pact and agree to become a real team. Later, Tracy arrives and takes them to meet the members of her group named Romeo, Kawa Ishigaki, and Ao Wenxing. Tracy tells the rest of her group that she killed a savage a few hours ago, and Romeo teases her for wasting her bullets to save random people. Zhiyang gets upset and almost gets into a fight with Romeo, but Ishigaki stops him and tells him that he must follow their rules if he wants to stay with them. He asks what the rules are and Ishigaki explains that they must obey the rules of the place where they're from or else they would be punished. After that, Tracy suggests that they check out an architectural complex she saw before and the group takes a vote. Eventually, Ishigaki is forced to write a check for $30 million to get everyone to go with him and Tracy. On their way to the place, Zhiyang whispers something in Tracy's ear and they go into the bushes to talk in private, but the others spy on them and see Tracy slap him hard on the face. After that awkward moment, they finally arrive at the place and find pyramids, which makes them assume they are in Egypt, but Ishigaki explains that Egypt is not the only place with pyramids. Unsure of where they are, they check the area for clues and in the process, Tracy finds burn marks on the floor and they presume that it must have been the savages who made a fire there. Ishigaki suggests that they explore the pyramid but Romeo declines, claiming he wants to stay outside. Zhiyang then suggests that they split up into two groups so Ishigaki takes Tracy for security, Sujin for medical emergency, and Ao Wenxing for anything requiring manpower. While they're inside the pyramid, Romeo talks with Zhiyang and suggests working together in the future to get as much as they can from Ishigaki by deliberately refusing to take his side on any decision. However, Zhiyang refuses to team up with him and claims that he doesn't need the votes to get what he wants. He then threatens Romeo with his knife and takes his $30 million check. In another flashback, we see Sujin telling Ning that she poisoned Zhiyang for trying to assault her. She later gave him the antidote after they formed a pact, but she reveals that it would cause him tremendous pain when the cure starts to take effect. Meanwhile, in the present, Zhiyang starts to feel pain in his stomach, and just then, they're ambushed by the savages. Ning and Romeo run away, but Zhiyang can't. Thankfully, Ning returns to save him and they run into the pyramid just in time as Romeo pulls a switch to lock out the savages with the pyramid door. After the group is reunited, Sujin notices that Ning was shot with a poison that would kill him in 10 hours if not treated. They attempt to go back out to get the cure from the savages, but the door is locked shut and they have to find another way out of the pyramid. Along the way, they come across a room with pillars and water. Suddenly, they see a group of people holding on for dear life in the water. One of the men is unconscious and the other is keeping him from drowning. They beg for help and Ishigaki suggests that they think carefully about the situation, so they ask them how they got on the island. One of the men named Andrew reveals that they were dumped on the island and claims that the unconscious man can read the symbols on the wall and find the exit of the pyramid. Hearing this, Ishigaki gives the go-ahead and Ao throws a rope into the water to pull them out. That's all for today's recap. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see more videos like this.